5,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, the old Sith Empire would emerge on the galactic scene and attack the known galaxy. After a year of intense fighting, the Jedi and the Republic allies eventually defeated their ancient nemesis, and 1,000 years of peace and prosperity reigned over the galaxy. But the dark side will always return. Its temptations too strong, and even the most noble fall to its grip. Exar Kun is one such tale, and almost had the Republic and the Jedi under his complete control. Born approximately 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, Exar Kun was considered to be one of the most promising young Jedi in the Order. His potential was rivaled by none, and he was no doubt the greatest student of the renowned Jedi Battlemaster, Vodosias Bas, ever trained. But before he was granted the title of Master, Kun betrayed the Order, his obsession with ancient Sith lore motivating the young knight to go on a quest for the forgotten secrets of the dark side. While investigating Frida Nad and the ancient Sith on Onderon, Kun rescued a pair of men, and after an interrogation and a promise of gold, the two agreed to guide Kun to Frida Nad's tomb. While exploring the Sith's final resting place, he came into contact with the spirit of Nad. Kun embraced the teachings of the ancient Sith and taught him the ways of the dark side. Soon after, Kun would come into brief contact with the fallen Jedi, Ulic Qel-Droma. At the pinnacle of their battle, the pair were interrupted by a group of Sith Lords. They anointed Exar as the reigning Dark Lord of the Sith, and Ulic his foremost apprentice. Kun then initiated the Great Sith War, which at the time was one of the most brutal in galactic history. During the war, Kun corrupted many of his former peers to his cause, and even slayed his former master after a heated duel on Coruscant. At the twilight of the conflict, the way of the Sith reared its ugly head once more. The apprentice betrayed the master. Qel-Droma revealed the location of Kun on Yavin 4, and eventually the Jedi had him surrounded. Rather than surrender, Kun began a Sith ritual, drawing on the life force of his many followers, and used the energy to become a Sith spirit. Before Kun could finish, the Jedi led by Nomi Sunrider sensed Kun's intentions and created a wall of light-side energy that encased the planet, imprisoning his spirit to the world. For 4,000 years, his spirit would remain dormant, until Jedi Master Luke Skywalker's Jedi Paraxium awakened him in 11 ABY. He terrorized the New Order of Knights, until the spirit of Master Bas aided them in finally eradicating the Sith once and for all. While Exar Kun may have failed in his conquest of the Republic, the Sith would eventually rise up and create an empire under their banner. For nearly 1,000 years, the Sith watched and waited, destabilizing the Galactic Republic whenever opportunity arose without revealing themselves to the known galaxy. Their grand plan was finally executed in 19 BBY. This plan not only put the Sith in power, but almost completely destroyed their enemy. One master attempted to stop the darkness and bring peace to the galaxy. That Jedi was the legendary Jedi Master, Mace Windu. Born on Harun Kel 72 years before the Battle of Yavin, Mace Windu, like most Jedi, were taken to the Jedi Temple at a young age, Windu being only 6 months old when he was brought to the Republic capital of Coruscant. Windu eventually became the Padawan to the Grand Master Yoda, becoming one of the most accomplished duelists in the Order's history. As a master, Mace had 5 Padawans, each with relative success, the most accomplished being Depa Billaba. One of his greatest achievements was developing a variation on the 7th form of lightsaber combat, which he created as an answer to his own inner darkness. His achievements and skill eventually led to Mace being granted the title of Master of the Order. During the Clone Wars, Mace took up a role as a Jedi General and led Republic forces to victory on many battlefields, such as Ryloth and Dantooine. He even faced some of the most notorious killers of his era, including Asajj Ventress and the former Jedi Master himself, Count Dooku. After 3 years of war, the conflict was finally coming to an end, until the Jedi Anakin Skywalker made a terrifying discovery.
We just received word that Obi-Wan has destroyed General Grievous. We're on our way to make sure the Chancellor returns emergency power back to the Senate.
He won't give up his power. I've just learned a terrible truth. I think Chancellor Palpatine is a Sith Lord.
A Sith Lord?
Yes, the one we've been looking for.
How do you know this?
He knows the ways of the Force. He's been trained to use the dark side.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
And our worst fears have been realized.
Mace took some of the Order's greatest masters, a team that included Kit Fisto, Aegon Kolar, and Siase Tin, to arrest the true Dark Lord of the Sith. After a quick battle, Windu was able to disarm and corner Darth Sidious. Before he could end the battle once and for all, he was betrayed. A conflicted Anakin intervened and severed his master's arm as he went to deal the final blow. Sidious then unleashed a barrage of Sith lightning and sent him falling to the streets below. Windu's death marked the beginning of the end for the Jedi Order and the start of the Great Jedi Purge. Exar Kun was in incredible shape and is in the midst of his physical prime. He featured an incredible build and was in his mid-20s at the time of his physical death on Yavin. His agility and speed were some of his most advanced attributes. This can be seen when he was able to keep up with the incredibly talented Jedi Silvar. This is made even more impressive when we factor in this was before his prime, and that the Jedi Nomi Sunrider couldn't even keep up with Silvar's speed, Sunrider being one of the most decorated knights of her era. Kun's speed and agility also didn't hamper his endurance. He is credited with fighting for hours against Ulic Qel-Droma without tiring. Another impressive display, considering Qel-Droma's fondness for strength-oriented strikes. Kun's strength was also considerable. When he used the Force to augment this trait, his lightsaber strikes have been known to unleash shockwaves that could be heard for miles. He was also able to break through Master Voto's Force-enhanced staff and even punch his way through Mandalorian steel, a material with the strength to resist lightsaber blades. Kun's durability, however, is very inconsistent. While he was buried under tons of rock and managed to live long enough for the Spirit of Freedom to heal him, he has also been affected by otherwise minor blows. Physically, Kun, in my opinion, is very much a result of his Force augmentation, and when his connection to the Force is hindered, his physical abilities falter as well. This isn't to say he is going to be helpless if his augmentation fails, but his feats go from superhuman to that of an average well-built human. Mace Windu was a male Kuruan and was 53 years of age at the time of his death. His species were near identical to humans, the only difference being all Corani were Force sensitive. While he may have just passed his physical prime, Windu was still in great physical shape due to his Jedi training. Mace was mainly known for two physical traits, them being his strength and incredible durability. His punches were strong enough to crush the armor of B-2 super battle droids, and he was even capable of ripping the metal off a Vulture droid mid-flight. His speed is also one of his most underrated attributes. He was able to dodge blaster fire with sheer speed, and was even fast enough to avoid a blaster shot from point-blank range with a mere sidestep. Endurance-wise, Mace was also very advanced. In the novel Shatterpoint, for 2 weeks, Mace ran on little to no sleep, was shot with a blaster, displayed an open wound on his neck, and was equipped with several other injuries to his chest, wrist, and knees. Yet he was still able to engage his former Padawan and live to tell the tale. As stated earlier, his resistance to pain was incredible. In his duel with his former apprentice Dababalaba, Mace would fight a gruesome duel, even after being stabbed in his abdomen moments prior. What makes Windu truly special physically is his ability to use all of his physical traits in perfect cohesion, not held back by any one. This is shown in his battle against Kar Vaster. While Vaster was much younger and held the edge in almost every category, Mace defeated him with his strength, incredible reflexes, and speed. This one is a little tricky, as both combatants are incredibly gifted in their physical attributes. While Kun may be younger, Windu has shown that he is more than capable of keeping up with such an adversary. Strength-wise, I would consider the two equals, as both have demonstrated incredible levels of strength, whether it's punching through Mandalorian iron, or the armor of B2 super battle droids. And in terms of endurance and speed, I would also deem the pair equals. What determines this round is the combatant's durability. While Kun could defend for a little, as the fight progresses and Mace begins to truly unleash his attack, could Kun keep his augmentation going? Well, I believe he can for the majority of the contest. The longer it goes and the more the two beat each other, only one is truly capable of withstanding such an assault, and that is the Jedi Master. Mace Windu gets the edge. Exar Kun was one of, if not the best swordsman of his era, and has never been defeated in a lightsaber duel. As a young apprentice, he was able to keep up and match his master in sparring, and eventually, as a knight, bested him on several occasions. Of his peers, only Ulic Qel-Droma could keep up with his martial prowess, and Exar had no difficulty in defeating the powerful warriors Silvar and Credo. Kun's lightsaber style was heavily influenced by his Jedi Master, relying on the unorthodox. According to the Knights of the Old Republic campaign guide, Exar Kun was a master of the sixth form of lightsaber combat, Nyman. A hybrid fighting style, Nyman incorporated elements from the previous forms, mainly forms 1 through 5, and balanced out between their various specializations. Form 6 covered many of the various moves of lightsaber combat, but due to its emphasis on overall moderation, its focus on blade work was somewhat relaxed. Nyman was a jack-of-all-trades style, and the success of the form was largely dependent on the practitioner's intuition, improvisation, and creativity. It should be noted that while Nyman provided no decisive edge in battle, it also had no major flaws. In my opinion, Nyman masters usually came in 3 distinct flavors. The first were those who studied Form 6 as a supplement to their Force abilities, or focused on another discipline and didn't truly focus on their martial might, such as Johann Othon, in his case focusing on diplomacy. The second were masters who used the style passively, using Nyman's adaptability to counter an opponent's style, adjusting their technique to suit their needs at the moment. A prime example of this would be Revan. And finally, the third flavor was a user who took all the styles and constantly changed forms in the midst of combat to overwhelm, confuse, and overpower opponents. And an excellent example of this would be General Grievous. Kun was definitely the third flavor. He would start out ruthlessly attacking in an attempt to end the engagement quickly. His main goal was to off-balance and stagger. Another factor we have to consider is how Kun is employing his weapon. When wielding it as a single blade, Kun's impressive strength was on full display, and his approach was much more traditional. He used powerful head-on attacks, but also with speed and ridiculous accuracy. When both blades were active, Kun used his weapon like a quarterstaff, using one blade to defend, then spin the weapon rapidly with the other blade, set for a killing blow. Also, when he was wielding his saber like this, the weapon's design made power strikes less viable, instead focusing on dexterity and speed. Kun was also a master of Trickata. Trickata was built off of deception and the retractable blade on the lightsaber. Quickly shutting off, then reigniting the blade, it would confuse one's opponent, allowing for diversionary feints in combat. Kun also didn't need both blades to be active to employ such techniques. He could change the length of his weapon at a moment's notice, off-balancing and confusing them. He can even have both blades active, but at different lengths. While he has never been seen utilizing this technique in combat, due to his technical sophistication, I wouldn't put it past him. His style was also much more creative and unorthodox due to his chosen weapon, creating a style very few could replicate. Kun is also specialized in Jar-Kai dual-blade fencing, a common practice amongst Form 6 practitioners, and even utilizes skill to great success against his master in a sparring session. Offensively, Exar would begin with a more conventional, yet extremely aggressive approach, opening with a single blade. If he didn't overwhelm his opponent outright, as he began to be pushed, he would switch tactics, utilizing both blades of his weapon. He would use speed and advanced flurries to confuse and overwhelm. And if that didn't work, Kun would sprinkle in elements of Chikata. For as talented as Kun is, his defensive capabilities leave a little to be desired. His defensive philosophy was a good offense is a good defense. When pressed, he would use one of his unorthodox techniques to surprise a foe and attempt to mount his offensive once more. He's also been seen incorporating unarmed physical strikes into his sequences, favoring a powerful punch or a devastating kick. Surprisingly, Kun has never been seen incorporating force attacks into his lightsaber sequences. However, considering this is a core aspect of the Nine-Man style, and how gifted Kun is as a force wielder, I don't think it would be very difficult for him to infuse such attacks into his sequences, especially if he became desperate. In the end, Exar Kun was a complete master of his chosen discipline, and could wield it both in a traditional and unorthodox manner. He was prepared to face any combat situation, and could only be defeated by a true master of lightsaber combat. Mace Windu was no doubt one of the most talented and accomplished lightsaber combatants of his day. He has spent his entire life developing and refining his skills, forging himself into an absolute monster on the battlefield. It is even stated by Yoda in the novel Yoda Dark Rendezvous that the only two Jedi capable of matching Count Dooku in a battle of the blade was himself and Windu. While Mace has mastered all of the 6 traditional styles employed by the Jedi, he created his own fighting style known as Vaapad. Developing the style as an answer to his love of a fight, Windu transformed the style into an expression of Jedi philosophy. Although the core of the style was Form 7 Juyo, Mace studied the unique styles used by his fellow masters and his knowledge of all the traditional forms to create a style that compensated for the inherited weaknesses of Juyo. Traditional Juyo was an aggressive style, and in order to be utilized effectively, required significant internal focus by the user. With no self-control, Form 7 users lose themselves to the aggressive nature of the style. This devolves their style into nothing more than weak-minded aggressive hacking and slashing. The core element of Juyo required practitioners to allow themselves to be swept up by the Force, the thrill of combat, and fight under the guidance of controlled passions. Windu took this core principle and applied it to the Jedi philosophy. The user would bolster oneself by feeding off the dark side energies created by their opponent, essentially bolstering one's own power off the aggression of the opponent and deflecting it back at them. Windu mastered this, and combined with his own inner darkness, channeled it into a weapon of the light. It was this feature that allowed Mace to fight with such success against Darth Sidious. He took the Dark Lord's aggression and power, and used it to enhance his own capabilities, taking away Sidious's main advantage and using it against him. It also explains how Windu could redirect Sith lightning back at the assailant. Offensively, Windu employed great speed and agility. He focused on both strength-based power strikes and incredibly quick, randomized attack patterns. This was done with such speed that his duel with Sidious was described as moving so fast, the two appeared to be moving in and out of existence from the perspective of Anakin Skywalker. He also landed 6 punches to Car Baster, faster than the eye could perceive. Some have even said it appears he wielded dozens of blades in combat, attacking from all angles. His attack was completely overwhelming, with blinding speed and strength. While many Form 7 masters sacrifice everything for offense, Windu was an exception, and his offensive focus didn't hinder his defensive capabilities. He was more than capable of completely cutting off an opponent's attack, the best example of this being his brief duel against Quinlan Vos, where he only used defensive maneuvers and held back against the Kiffer. He can also be seen utilizing his knowledge of the other forms. Against lightsaber-wielding opponents, he would employ the tight, strong defensive style of Sarisu. When pitted against blaster-wielding foes, Windu would employ the Xian variant of Form 5, redirecting shots back at an opponent. In one case, he even redirected a laser beam back at an army of opposing Spider Walkers during the Battle of Coruscant. Along with a traditional saber, Mace was also a master in Jar-Kai dual-blade fencing, using such techniques against Depa Billaba during the events of Shatterpoint. While he primarily preferred to use his lightsaber in battle, Mace has also been seen to incorporate force powers into his lightsaber sequences, usually a telekinetic strike. Tactically, Mace was very gifted, and always knew the situation around him. This can be seen when he throws a speeder at General Grievous on Boz Pity, or when he threw a vibro shield at Car Vaster, chopping his hands off in the process. But the best example can be seen when he faced Sidious. He leads the Sith Lord to the edge of a window in the office, forcing the Sith Lord to lessen his own attack so he didn't fall, allowing Windu to disarm him. In the end, Mace Windu was a complete master swordsman and had the perfect style that balanced out between his own inner darkness and the allegiance to the light.
Surrender.
General Windu, perhaps we can come to a compromise.
Not when I hold all the cards.
This round is very difficult to determine. Both combatants are complete masters with a blade, and wield unique styles that fit their character perfectly. While both styles may be unorthodox to an extent, one thing is always consistent, and that is their preference for pure offense. The duel between these two would be like two freight trains smashing into one another. I'd have to say Mace would have the early edge, feeding off Kun's aggression. But once Kun employed his second blade, Mace would have to defend, and Kun would have the upper hand. But Mace is too smart to not be able to adapt and keep up with this unorthodox style, and his knowledge of all 7 forms would help him answer Kun's randomized attacks. What truly determines this round is Mace's Vapad. What helped Mace defeat Sidious was the fact the Dark Lord made no effort to conceal his dark side energies, allowing him the upper hand. I have no doubt in my mind Kun would make the same mistake and wouldn't mask his dark side prowess whatsoever. This would allow Windu the chance to turn Kun's own attack against him, and give himself a considerable boost. If this was a battle of pure swordsmanship, it would end very similar to Mace's duel with Sidious. Mace Windu gets the edge. Exar Kun originally wielded a standard Jedi lightsaber with the blue blade. However, after his turn to the dark side, Kun redesigned the saber into a truly formidable piece of weaponry. The redesigned lightsaber was based on instructions hidden within an ancient Sith holocron. The finished product was a double-bladed weapon imbued with dark side energy. The specific modifications were a second emitter matrix installed at the base of the hilt, and blade intensity and length adjustment controls. The blade's intensity could be switched from nothing more than a glowing rod to a full-blown saber. Powering the weapon was most likely 2 blue Adegan crystals. Kun also wore Sith gauntlets that used to belong to Naga Sadow. While these were capable of creating large force blasts, more on that later, they provided little to no defensive help. Defensively, however, Kun was known to wear various types of armored suits, including a customized light battlesuit, which offered considerable protection despite its weight, and maintained good flexibility. While it does have decent defensive capabilities, it wouldn't hold up against a dedicated lightsaber strike. Master Windu carried 2 lightsabers throughout his time as a Jedi. As an initiate, Windu was able to glimpse the future in brief visions. During these visions, Mace was able to see the lightsaber he would eventually build. This was a cause for concern within the Jedi Council, however, as Windu was unable to construct a weapon resembling the lightsaber he saw in his dreams. At the age of 14, Windu requested a true challenge, so that he would be able to find the parts necessary to build his weapon. Upon the request, the Council sent him to the planet Hurricane alone. On the planet, one of the natives presented him with a violet-colored lightsaber crystal, which he used to finally construct the lightsaber he had seen in his visions of the future. Sometime before 22 BBY, Mace created a second lightsaber in recognition of his position as a senior Jedi Council member. It was built to the highest standards, emphasizing precision and quality. The weapon incorporated an electrum finish reserved only for the most senior members of the Council, as well as the signature violet crystal of his earlier weapon. His second lightsaber served him throughout the galaxy-spanning Clone Wars, until his death at the hands of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine in 19 BBY. While Mace Windu's lightsaber is beautifully designed, Kun's has way more features that could aid him in all situations. Kun also has a set of armor, and while it may not be able to withstand a lightsaber strike, some armor is better than no armor at all. Exar Kun gets the edge. From a young age, Exar Kun demonstrated immense skill and potential in his use of the Force. While as a Jedi he relied on more basic light side abilities, as a Sith Lord, Kun truly came in his own, being one of the strongest dark side adepts in galactic history. The complete Star Wars encyclopedia also states that Exar Kun was the most powerful Dark Lord of the Sith from his lineage and of his time, placing him above the likes of Frida Nad, Carnus Mur, Margo Ragnos, Nag Sidao, and many others. Exar Kun's primary Force ability was Force Augmentation, boosting his speed and strength to superhuman levels, compensating for his style's intense technical demands. In more common abilities, Kun was very proficient in the use of telekinesis. He used it with incredible accuracy and intense power, being able to break through the shields of other Force wielders with relative ease. One of the most prominent examples being how he threw the Jedi Silvar back with a flick of his hand. The Knights of the Old Republic campaign guide credits Kun with skill in Force Whirlwind. Whirlwind was a more advanced form of Force Push, and a rather feeble version of Force Wave. The user would alter the air currents around an opponent, turning it into a maelstrom. This swirling force would lift an opponent into the air, spin them around, and leave them incapable of moving out of it. The encyclopedia also credits him with skill in Force Wound, where Kun could telekinetically cause spasms in the lungs and other organs of his targets, painfully injuring them. He used this ability to kill the famed Jedi Master, Odan-Ur. His defense against telekinesis was just as impressive as his offensive skill, and he could only be affected by the strongest of Force Masters. The Knights of the Old Republic campaign guide also credits Kun with knowledge of Force Stun. Force Stun was a force power that could temporarily deaden the senses and perceptions of a targeted enemy, preventing most movements. While this power could be manifested into more intense applications, such as Force Stasis and Stasis Field, Kun has never been displayed employing such powers. However, I wouldn't put it past him. In terms of telepathy, Exar Kun was a master and could use the basic Jedi mind trick with no difficulty at all. He was also able to rip information from one's mind, as he did to the Massassi on Yavin 4. Kun was very skilled in the concealment arts, and could mask his Force alignment and even their entire presence from other Force sensitives, such as he did on Ossus. Energy-based attacks were right up Kun's alley, and he had practice hand with Force Lightning. While the intensity of this lightning was unknown, considering Kun's strengths and other aspects of the Force, I wouldn't be surprised if it was on the same level as Darth Bane. However, he restrained from using lightning in combat, instead preferring to use his gauntlets. Originally belonging to the powerful Sith Lord Naga Sidao, Kun claimed the ancient gauntlets when he discovered them on Yavin 4. The gauntlets amplified the focus and the rage of the user, and unleashed beams of raw, dark side energy. Kun has shown quite the range with this power as well. He could use the beam to nearly incapacitate an opponent, or he could use them to decimate whatever stood in his way, such as when he completely destroyed the spirit of Frida Nad. Defensively, Kun was well adapted and had many abilities to call upon. He is credited with skill in energy resistance, suggesting skill in Tutaminis. While Exar is likely not capable of catching a lightsaber, I'm fairly confident in saying he can defend against blasters, and even Force Lightning. And even if he was beat up in combat, he was proficient in the rare Dark Healing art. Although it was believed that malevolent Force users could not employ Force healing, this was a wrong assumption. The dark side could in fact be used to heal, but not nearly to the extent of using the light. The healing was only temporary and required renewed applications or constant concentration to remain active. While an impressive feat, Kun's true power lied in his knowledge of Sith sorcery and alchemy. The best display of his magic can be seen when he cast a spell on the entire Galactic Senate, consisting of thousands, forcing them into stillness and compelling them to watch him. He also stunned an unknown amount of Jedi, with only a few resisting him. He then proceeded to conduct a speech to the entire chamber, using the Grand Chancellor of the Galactic Senate as his vessel. Kun also conducted a number of experiments, successfully creating battle hydras and Takata. His most famous experiment, however, was when he successfully transformed the Massassi priest into a powerful, alchemy-enhanced dark-side monster. While Kun's knowledge of sorcery and alchemy is impressive, they don't have much combative use in a one-on-one confrontation, and they aren't anywhere near as combatively viable as Darth Zana's spells of madness. Kun's most impressive display of the Force came in his final moments when he displayed his use in essence transfer. In his final moments, he performed a ritual in his Temple of Power on Yavin 4 in response to the Jedi's collective attempt at destroying him. After strapping himself to an apparatus, he siphons the life force of thousands of Massassi, binding him to his temple as a spirit, and providing him with enough Force reserves to last him 4 millennia, until the Jedi of Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order awoke in him. At the end of the day, Exar Kun was one of the most powerful Force wielders in the Sith Order, and only the highest tier Force wielders could match him in a battle of the Force. Mace Windu was one of the most practiced Force wielders of his day, and was considered to be only second to Yoda in this field. He would use his immense power to decimate the battlefield and completely overwhelm and overpower foes in a duel. Like Kun, Mace was more than able to use the Force to augment his physical abilities, most notably his strength and speed. However, his primary Force ability was telekinesis. He is able to grip and throw multiple adversaries with relative ease. He also has absolutely no problems moving large objects, knocking over a huge gate in ATTE during the Battle of Ryloth. While telekinesis may be a basic Force ability, Windu took it and elevated to a master level, able to employ powerful Force waves that could submit entire armies. In a one-on-one duel, Windu's main focus was to use the Force to overpower an adversary, and has been quite successful in its application, being able to submit both Sora Bulk and Quinlan Vos with a telekinetic strike. While not commonly associated with the light side, Windu has been seen using telekinesis to crush his opponents. This deadly technique lifted the opponent into the air, and as they were floating, their body would implode as it was crushed by the Force. He used this ability on both the battlefield and in duels, the most famous example being when he utilized this against General Grievous, giving him his signature cough. I think it's safe to say Windu's use of telekinesis fits his fighting style perfectly. Aggressive and powerful, yet controlled and calculated. Along with telekinesis, Windu is skilled in telepathy, more than capable of using the basic Jedi mind trick, and even a more advanced version, the beast control ability. Defensively, Windu could utilize Toot's Menace. While the level at which he could use this ability is unknown, because of Windu's skill level, I think it's safe to say he is more than capable of defending against blasters and other projectiles. However, I do believe lightning to be out of his league, and he prefers to use his saber to deflect such an attack anyways. Mace also had a relative understanding of the healing arts. Force healing is a Force technique that can heal wounds and ease pains. However, in order to heal himself, Windu would have to take a moment he wouldn't have in a duel against Kun. And finally, we've come to Mace's most famous ability, Shatterpoint. Only a few powerful Force adepts were capable of such an ability, including Darth Caedus, Darth Krayt, Cade Skywalker, and Jaina Solo. Shatterpoints were a complex Force phenomenon, perceivable only by an unknown innate talent. Shatterpoints were akin to fault lines, similar to different pathways of actions. Adept Force wielders were able to perceive these faults through the Force and influence them, While Shatterpoints help Windu in where to attack, it does not tell him how to exploit that weakness. That is all up to him. In the end, this ability's combative viability is highly debated, and I personally find myself agreeing with Forklifter Matt on the topic. Without further ado, Matt, go ahead.
There are basically two schools of thought when discussing Mace Windu's talent with this particular ability, and whether or not he could use it effectively in combat. I personally believe that he couldn't use this ability in a one-on-one lightsaber duel. However, if Mace did know how to effectively use this ability in a lightsaber duel, don't you think he would have used it in duels where he was pushed to the limit, like his duels with Darth Sidious and Asajj Ventress? Other than his fight with Jango, no other source has stated that Mace could use Shatterpoint combatively, especially in a lightsaber duel.
At the end of the day, Mace uses the Force as a supplement to his martial prowess. He uses it as a blunt instrument, to overwhelm and overpower whoever crosses blades with him. This round is simple. Both men are regarded as some of the strongest Force wielders of their day. However, while Mace is only considered to be the strongest of his day, Kun is regarded as one of the strongest Force wielders in the entire Sith Order. Mace may be able to match and even surpass Kun in terms of telekinesis, but that's about it. Kun has a surplus of abilities to call upon, including Force Lightning or even using his gauntlets. And even if Mace blocked that, Kun could use Force Stun. Not to mention, if Kun had any spell that affected Windu, it would be endgame, as the Jedi Master has no defense against such an attack. Exar Kun gets the edge. Finally, we've reached the verdict. I say the winner of this contest wins a solid 7 out of 10 times, and let's say it takes place in the throne room on Naboo. The two would come into contact with one another, and the two would know one of them wouldn't be leaving the fight alive. They would ignite their blades, Mace his purple blade, and Kun's blue, only igniting one end of his double saber. The early fight would be a battle of pure martial prowess, the pinnacles of each form on full display. I'd have to give Mace the early advantage, his vape pad working wonders, feeding off the dark side energies of his foe. Kun would utilize his strength-oriented approach, just to be stonewalled by Mace. Mace would gain ground on Kun, continuing to pound away with randomness and speed. The mid-fight would begin when Kun pushes Mace away and begins to gain some ground. Kun would taunt the Jedi Master and unveil his saber has not one, but 2 blades. Mace would stay composed, trying to stay in his battle mode. Kun gets the advantage here. His unpredictability and unorthodox style of fighting would send Windu back. He wouldn't be able to predict what his opponent would do next. He would counter, only to find another blade coming straight at him. This portion of the battle could last for hours, and their physical capabilities would truly be pushed to the edge. The late game is where the Force powers would finally begin to play a factor in the fight. The longer this fight goes, the more Kun would use the dark side to fuel him, and his augmentation. He breaks off the attack, and goes for a blast of forced energy. Windu ducks and avoids it at the last second. He jumps at Kun immediately, however, feeding off the Dark Lord's anger. He relentlessly wails on Kun, the Sith now on the defensive. Mace could begin to see the few slight holes in Kun's otherwise perfect style. He hammers away. He would begin bringing in items around him, forcing them on Kun. Eventually, Kun notices a chair coming straight towards him. While he is occupied avoiding the blow, Mace reaches his arm out and sends a huge telekinetic wave straight at him. Kun senses it, but it was too late. He only partially got a shield up to defend, but the blow still hit its mark. Kun was shaken, his augmentation beginning to weaken from the prolonged duel. Digging deep into all his anger and power, he readies himself for the next portion of the duel, as Windu charges at him like a crazed bull. Windu again relentlessly attacks Kun, each blow gaining more and more and more success, until he found the killing blow and ended the Sith Lord's life. This contest all comes down to the mid-fight. If Kun can somehow surprise Windu and find the lethal blow, this is his fight to lose. However, as I stated earlier, I feel Windu could defend against his onslaught, Windu's vape-pad is what truly grants him the victory. The longer the fight goes on, and the deeper Kun goes into the dark side, the more likely Windu is to come up the victor. If Mace tried to use his force powers too frequently, Kun would reply in kind and completely decimate Windu. Luckily for Mace, however, Kun rarely used the force as a primary tool in combat, instead relying on his absolute mastery of the blade. And while Kun is the clear superior in his use of the force, he prefers to deal the killing blow with his blade. This fight is determined on martial might, and for every trick Kun has, Windu can adapt and match with even greater ferocity. The more Kun draws on the dark side, for every failed attempt to break Mace's defense, the more ground Mace will gain. This is the perfect storm against Kun. Against 95% of Mace's peers, he dominates, but unfortunately for him, he's fighting the one man who matches up against him perfectly. I declare Mace Windu, the badass the victor.